Hi everyone, and welcome back to Algebra 2. I'm Mrs. Stillwell, and I'll be covering our lesson for today. Please remember the rules of note-taking. If you see it on your screen, you should be writing it in your notes. Some of you printed the notes out ahead of time, which will allow you to watch the video and work through the examples. Feel free to add things in your own words so they're easier to study later on. And don't forget to hit pause and replay as often as you need to. This is especially true during the examples and the you-try problems. Okay, here we go. Today we're going to be covering Chapter 4, Polynomial Functions, Section 1, Graphing Polynomial Functions. This is our second part to this. Our learning target is graphing polynomial functions. Today we're going to go over the basics of graphing a polynomial function when you don't have any information except what you can actually see in the problem. And there are basically 3 steps. First step, check the degree and the leading coefficient. You learned about that in an earlier lesson. The degrees are listed down this side. The leading coefficient is either going to be a positive number or a negative number, and this will show you what those graphs will look like. Again, these are just rough sketches, but your graph will basically look like these things. After you're done deciding which one of these it will be, by using the degree and the leading coefficient, make a table. This is what the table will look like. -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Those aren't the only numbers in the universe, but they will be the easiest most of the time. Once you are done doing that, you are going to connect those dots using a smooth curve. Okay, and again, making it as smooth as you can. This is going to be more of a sketch, honestly, than it is a graph. Okay, let's get down to some work. And here we go. So we are going to graph the following and describe the leading coefficient and the degree. Leading coefficient is -1. The degree is 3. From that, I know leading coefficient is a negative, degree 3. I know it's going to roughly look like this. So I'm just going to kind of sketch it to myself so I remember up here basically what that thing's going to look like. And then I'm going to create my own table. And remember how to do that. All we do is we take the first number and we plug it in every time we see a blank space. And we solve that. That's going to be a -8. That makes it a +8. That's a +4. That's a -6. And that's a -3. And if we add those together, we've got 12. -6 is 6. -3 is 3. And we have our first value. Going to our second value. -1 cubed is -1. That makes it a +1. -1 squared is a +1. 3 times -1 is a -3. And then -3. And if we add those together, we get 2. -3 is -1. -3 more is a -4. And we continue with that, so on and so forth, until we finish all of them. Hopefully you're willing to trust me when I fill out the rest of these numbers without taking time to plug those in. Okay, once we have that, we are going to come over here and graph it. -2, 3, -1, -4, 0, -3, 1, 0, and 2, -1. Okay, again, remembering it looks roughly like that. Here we go. I hit all of the points and I made a smooth curve. Now, is that 100% perfect? Nope. but that's as close as we can get with the skills we have right now. We will have better skills later in this chapter, but for right now, that's what we have. Okay, if you will please go ahead and do our U-try, which is right here. Pause and come back when you are when you have finished completing the problem. Again, please don't wait for me to do it for you. Try it on your own and then come back and see how you did. Okay, welcome back. When you plugged in your numbers, and again, I'm only going to do the first couple, you ended up with 16. That's a -8. That makes it a +8. That's a +4, so that's a -16 plus 4. And when we add those together, we get 12. Bigger than I wanted to graph, but that's what happens sometimes. Plug in a -2. And again, I get a 16 here. Oops, sorry, -1. What am I doing? There we go. We'll try that again. Plug in a -1, and I get +1. That's a -1, so that makes it a +2. That's a 1, which makes that a 4, and a +4, and we end up with a 2. Once you finish filling out the table, you end up having a problem that looks like that. And here we go with our graphing. Now that's too big. I'm not willing to go that big for the numbers, but I can do -1, 2. I can do 0, 4. I can do 1, 0, and I can do 2, -4. The other thing I can remind myself is that -2, 12 is going to be way up here someplace. Now what I needed to start off doing, which I did not do, so that's my bad, our leading coefficient is positive, and our degree is 4, which means I'm going to have something that looks roughly like that. Again, getting that from the table that I already gave you. So when I connect the points on these, again, I don't know exactly how it's going to look, so I'm going to make it my roughly like that. Roughly like that. Again, connecting the smooth curves. Okay. Hopefully that made sense. Again, if it didn't, or if you need some extra help on that, please make sure you talk to your teachers during your tutorial periods. Okay, second thing we need to talk about is characteristics of polynomials. When you have a function that's increasing, that means that it is heading upward. When you have a function that's decreasing, it's heading downward. They can either call it f of x or they can just call it f, so please don't get confused between those two. So we've got functions increasing and we've got functions decreasing. The other thing that a function can do is it can be above the x-axis or it can be below the x-axis. These are where it hits the x-axis. These are the points that you want to do first. So the hint here is start with where it is above the x-axis and below the x-axis and put those on the actual x-axis and then do the increasing decreasing part. Now that's not going to make a lot of sense until you actually see an example. So here's an example of that. We have sketching the graph and describing the degree and the leading coefficient for, okay, here's our increasing, decreasing information, so I'm going to do that second. I will do this first, and I will do that second. So the first thing I need here are all the important numbers. So I've got a 0, a 4, a -2, a +3, and a +5. So I've got a 3, a 4, I've got a -2, and I have a 0. So 0, 4, -2, 3, and 5. Those are my important numbers, so I put them on my graph. Notice I don't have any y values marked here. That's because I don't have any information about that. So we're starting here first, so I know -2, 3, and 5, -2, 3, and 5 are all x-intercepts. It's above the x-axis, in between -2 and 3. So in between -2 and 3, my graph is above the x-axis. So I just kind of draw a little sketch like that, above the x-axis, so I'll remember. After 5, it's also above the x-axis, so after 5, it's above the x-axis. Again, not trying to be perfect, I'm sketching a graph. I am sketching a graph. Okay, smaller than -2, it's below the x-axis. And in between 3 and 5, it's below the x-axis, which is, of course, makes sense because it's only really got two choices. It's got to be above or below the x-axis. Can everyone start to see my shape here? I can already start to see it. Okay, going back to this. F is increasing. That means it's heading up when x is less than 0. So when x is less than 0, it's heading up. Past 0 to 4, it's heading down. All the way to 4. And then after 4, it's heading back up again. And I've got my sketch. Smooth that thing out. Should be a little rounder right here, but that's basically my graph. Now, I can go back to my original and compare that, and I recognize that it is this, a degree of 3 and a positive leading coefficient. So I have a leading coefficient that is positive and a degree of 3. Okay, time for you to try this one. Please go ahead and write down this problem. Do the very best you can on it. Pause. And when you're ready to, come back and we will cover what you need. Okay, welcome back. Let's see how we did. First thing, always, we're doing this, and then we're doing that. Our important numbers, -2, 0, 2, -3, -1. Wow, we've got a lot of important numbers. So let's get those things put down. So I've got a -3, a -2, a -1, a 0, a 1, a 2, and a 3. Again, please notice I have absolutely no y values at all because I don't know anything about the function except what they're describing right here. Okay, starting here, above the x-axis when it's less than 3, so back here it's above the x-axis. Between -1 and 1, it's above the x-axis. And after 3, it's above the x-axis. You can already start to see a shape appearing. Between -3 and -1, it's below the x-axis. And between 1 and 3, it's below the x-axis. Can you see the shape? Okay, once we've got that, we're going to go with increasing. Increasing means it's heading in an upward direction between -2 and 0. So from -2 up to 0, it's heading up. It's heading down after -2, so heading in a downward direction, so there's down. From 0 to 2, it's heading down. 0 to 2, it's heading down. And after 2, it's heading right back up again. All right, pulling out our referral sheet, our reference guide here, we can see we just drew a positive 4th degree. So leading coefficient is positive, and our degree is 4. Please check that with what you did. Make sure that you're fine. If not, again, as always, please check in with your teachers either during your class or during the tutoring sessions in the afternoon. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.